unarmed men.
Muhammad is a liar.
Liar? You don't let him speak. Where's the lie and where's the truth? When it hasn't been spoken yet.
Muhammad is a fraud.
In Mecca, 6 centuries after Christ died, Islam was born. But where tens of thousands stand today, once there was only one. One man with a mission of brotherhood and love. And the one became a few who dared to oppose the cruel tyranny of a pagan society.
Have mercy!
A few courageous rebels who spilled their blood in the sand in a heroic struggle against oppression. And the few became a mighty force that shook the world.
Muhammad, messenger of God. Who gave him this authority?
God sent Muhammad as a mercy to mankind.
We'll do now what we should have done before. Kill Muhammad.
Ali, his cousin, lay there to die for him. Who are we fighting?
Hamza the hunter, the lion of God, was a thorn in the flesh of the rulers of Mecca. It was Hamza who slew Atbar at the wells of Badr and led the outnumbered Muslims to victory.
Strike!
Atbar's daughter Hind swore a terrible vengeance.
With my name, Hamza, I'll give you measure for measure. I will make Hamza my running lion, my prey. And when you're dead, Hamza, I will cut your heart out.
All the power, all the pageantry of living history.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening and welcome to another program of the Classics Show. I am your host Shabnam Riaz. It's always a pleasure to be here, and much so more as it is the holy month of Ramzan. Blessings everywhere, and they're waiting to be reaped in all that we do during this holy month. And of course, you know, this is the time we had an earlier program when we talked about reconnecting with oneself, reconnecting with your spiritual side. This is the time that we can take a break from everything that goes on throughout the year. And then whatever we learn, you know, the thing is to retain it and to carry it on in the rest of the 365 days as well. Okay, so now for today's topic, we're going to talk about the film The Message. The Message was a film that was made that depicted the life of our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and the revelations of the Quran and how Islam came into existence. Now, to talk about today's program, we have with us Ahmad Hammad, who has been on the program before as well. You are a poet and a film lecturer from the GCU Lahore. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thank you.
To talk about today's film, The Message. The title is self-explanatory, of course. It was, in fact, a huge challenge, was it not, to conceive of the idea, to talk about the origins of Islam, to talk about the Prophet, peace be upon him, and to take all that historical data be factually correct and then go on to represent it.
Yeah, basically the first challenge of making this movie was to avoid any sort of impersonation of the holy figures of Islam. For example, if you cast a person who is going to impersonate the Holy Prophet ﷺ or his companions, very respected and very holy companions, people will definitely people will mind it, and they can go astray, and they can come to you and they can question why, how did you dare to cast someone who can impersonate even the voice of the Prophet ﷺ. So it was really a huge challenge, and we haven't seen any example. I think early Christian the films which were made on the teachings of Christianity, in which Jesus was cast in some role and someone comes forward and impersonates him. Such experiments were carried out in the early ages of filmmaking, but it was for the very first time in the history of Islam that a film was going to be made, and this film was going to convey the basic teachings of Islam through the pillars, through the significant people, through the central figures of Islam. For example, Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq Radiyallahu Ta'ala anhu, and the companion of our Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Hazrat Umar and Sayyidina Ali and Usman, and these are very very sacred figures for Muslims. So it was not very easy for the filmmaker to talk about these people, to represent these people, and to not show. The face was not shown.
The main characters. The main characters behind that. So, you know, it was, to start off with, it was a very daunting project. It was something that was very awe-inspiring, but at the same time, he must have had a lot of stress and tension to be correct in every way.
Factually correct, historically correct, and cinematically, for that matter, correct. I think that as a student of cinema, I always have been greatly inspired by this film. The way he has depicted the circumstances of the Makkah and Medina of that age, it was phenomenal. The way he depicted, the way he composed the visuals of the Makkah and Medina of that age, it was phenomenal. It was very impressive, and the way he incorporated the music into those visuals was phenomenal again. Would you believe that the person who gave the music score behind those visuals was a great composer, and he has been giving the music score for various films of David Lean. David Lean, he is a legendary character of the filmmaking history. You see, David Lean's Dr. Zhivago has the music score of this gentleman, Maurice, who has actually given the music score for the Message as well. If you put your DVD into the player and start watching the Message, you will be practically haunted by the music, first of all.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It has that haunting element that stays with you.
Exactly.
It sort of immerses itself in, it's setting the mood to the film.
Exactly. Thank you very much for helping out. You know, it actually captivates you, and it sets the mood, and it takes you along with it, you know, and it complements every visual. Every visual, be that the last scene, be that azan, before azan and after azan, wherever you see that, and circumambulations are actually, you know, complemented by the music and by the sound design as well. I mean, this was a great project, and a great person came forward, and this is why this film is great. Project was challenging, no doubt, but the person was greater. And he dealt with it with wisdom and with vision.
How long
with
did it
expertise.
take to make? How many years did it? How much time did it take?
That's an interesting question. About 6 months. It actually, they were not allowed to shoot in Makkah and Medina. Therefore, they had to build
They had to
artificial
make something,
cities
yes.
in Morocco and in Libya. It took about 6 months to prepare the sets for
Of
that
course.
film. And shooting continued for about 1 year. And interestingly, this film has been made in 2 languages. First of all, it is in English, and the second version is Arabic, yes.
Yeah.
And Mustafa Akkad, who is the director, did not agree to dub it. He said that it was not possible for me because I am an Arab. He is a Syrian.
Yeah.
I am an Arab. I know that while talking, when an Arab talks, his nuances and body language is entirely different from those of the people who live in the West.
Yeah.
Therefore, he did not want to dub it. What he did, he actually started shooting it twice.
Simultaneously, once in English and then in Arabic.
Then in Arabic.
This scene would be redone.
Scene was redone, and all the cast was different. The cast for the English version was entirely different from the one that was working for the Arabic version. So it was great. I mean, I'm greatly influenced by it.
So this was basically a labor of love, wasn't it, from the director? Because he was also, he said that he wanted to bring forward, as a Muslim living in the West, he wanted to bring something that would tell everybody, you know, this is where we've come from. These are our roots. And this is everything about who we are and where our existence lies.
True. Someone inquired about this film as to why were you going to make it. He said it is totally personal. He said, I am a Muslim and I get surprised when I see that there are about 700 million people who follow this religion. Still, very little is known about this religion to the West. And I just want to tell the West that the origin of terrorism is not, Islam is not the origin of terrorism. And he further, he actually goes on saying that if you can associate terrorism with the religion, then there were only crusades, and still he says that it was not due to Christianity. Christianity is not the origin of the crusades. Actually, Christianity was used by some misadventurous people who wanted to use religion as a shield or as a you know, it was a persona
many political
of
motives.
Yeah, exactly. They were
true.
they were territorial, and there were other you know, persuasions. So he said that Islam was not the origin of terrorism, and this is what I wanted to tell people, that Islam is the religion of peace. And this is the message actually, and through this film I wanted to convey this very message, that Islam is the religion of peace. And Shabnam, you will be surprised to, you will be happily surprised to know that this is exactly what Karen Armstrong also did through her book. He said that she wrote a book with the title Prophet of Our Time, Muhammad, the Prophet of Our Time. And she wanted to tell the Western world that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was the messenger of peace. And she goes on saying that it was other forces who wanted to force the early Muslims to come forward and to fight against them. Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to delay the war as longer as possible.
And also, you know, we saw in the battle scenes, the Battle of Badr and the other battle as well, Uhud as well, that the rules of battle, prisoners of war, this was also explained as well.
Exactly. Even when the conquest of Mecca is I must say that is a great event in the history of mankind, that without any bloodshed. And there were clear commandments from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that don't cut the event of the conquest of Makkah, if someone still emphasizes, if someone still insists that Islam is the origin of war, I think that he is mentally sick.
In fact, Hammad, isn't it true that, you know, according to the essence of our religion and what is also depicted in the film, we have the aura and we have the, you know, we watch that Islam was not about just preaching. It was practice. It was example. It was people watching a certain group of people behave, interact, seeing them, their manners, their politeness, their humbleness, and other people being drawn towards the religion at that time by asking, who are these people? The way they behave, the way they sit, the way they speak. This was the main attraction towards Islam, that it was spread through practice, and it was spread through people watching Muslims behave and interact and conducting their worldly affairs and saying, we're just so highly impressed with them, who are they?
Yeah, exactly. According to Karen Armstrong, the inception of Islam was the result of financial difference between the classes. The ones who were wealthier never supported or never show, they were not ready to show any sort of sympathy to the poor, and it actually disturbed Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he came forward and introduced a spiritual creed, and that creed was purely based, although it was purely based upon some spiritual motives, but there were some financial motives as well, and not financial to earn. It was not the motive of the Prophet to earn something from that creed. He actually wanted a classless society where
equality.
Equality, yes. Practically a classless society. There shouldn't be a class who can corrupt the other class, who can suppress the other class. It was clearly the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that don't suppress and never get suppressed as well.
Yes.
Don't suppress anywhere.
Fight against oppression.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, justice and equality was the core, it was the essence of the message of Rasulullah ﷺ, and this is what he actually depicted through the film as well.
When they cast Anthony Quinn as Hazrat Hamza in the film, I think that is because when I saw the film for the first time, I remember that I was hugely impacted by it, and it really did touch me on so many levels. Already being a Muslim myself, you know, I could identify with many things, but I used to always think that when a person who is not a Muslim and who's not familiar with the religion, when they see the film, you get this certain sense of calm and understanding as to, you know, our Prophet, peace be upon him, and what he represented at a time when the Arabs were severely in need of direction.
Yeah.
And you know, the casting of Anthony Quinn, tell us about that, because I think he was amazing.
Yeah, Shabnam, we have 3 phases when we make a film. It's the pre-production first of all, and there comes the production and then post-production. When I teach film at university level, I always say that about 90% film is made when pre-production is done. In pre-production, we cast people, we decide about the costumes, we decide about the positions of light and position of the camera and the compositions and everything. Practically everything is written on paper. So about 90% of the film is made when it is still in pre-production phase.
Right.
I think that if you are impressed by Anthony Quinn's role and the way he played that role, I must say that credit goes to Mustafa Akkad, who directed the film. Actually, it is the duty of the director who casts the people if he thinks that this role can best played by this person and only this person from the entire society and from entire the pool which is available to the director, pool of talent which is available to the director. The credit must go to the director who actually picks up a person, the most suitable person who is going to play the role. Anthony Quinn played some negative roles in the films as well, but in this film he was very kind. He actually looks very kind when he submits himself to the Prophet ﷺ. Even he was an uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, still he loves a lot. He respects the nephew, and the way he respects the nephew, especially when the mosque was being built. Look at the expression of the character. The character. Anthony Quinn plays that character. It was, if you are touched by the character, it is purely due to Mustafa Akkad's casting. We say that don't miscast anyone. You know, in Pakistani films and in Indian films sometimes we are habitually miscasting people. For example, in old 70s films or 60s films, person who is in 40s used to come in the room, in the house, by, you know, shouting mom and a BA pass kar liya, and people didn't used to believe that in this age you are getting graduated, you know. So it was purely the best example of miscasting, but Mustafa Akkad did not miscast. You are talking of Anthony Quinn. I highlight some other characters as well. Look at Hind. I mean, she has been marvelous.
Absolutely.
Look at Bilal.
Oh, yes,
I think that, I assume that Bilal was like that. Sayyidina Bilal Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu. He is so powerful in his facial expressions, and when he is calling to pray, the azan, yes, the first azan.
The first azan.
I mean, that was amazing. The way he is calling by standing on the roof of Kaaba, and the way people are responding to that call.
And
people are
beauty,
stunned.
And the beauty of that scene, sorry for interrupting, the beauty of that scene is the way they lead up to the first azan.
Exactly.
When they say that we want everyone to come together now, it's time for prayer, what should we do? And then they think of different things, that what could be done to summon people for prayer. And then they say, what's better than the human voice? Human
voice, exactly. And when human voice comes for the first time, and that strikes from the first time with the hearing of the passerbys, they stop for a while and they start looking at the character who is calling for the prayer. And Bilal, the character of Bilal also looks at them because they are stunned and they are failed to comprehend what's going on. He says, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah. Yeah. And with the motion of the hands, he actually directs them to come to the mosque. This is how nowadays we call azan by Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah. But he's actually directing them with the hand, with the motion of the hand. So please come to the mosque and say your prayer. So it is phenomenal. I mean, I give full marks to Mustafa Akkad for casting Hazrat Bilal, for casting Abu Jahl even. He becomes, by the end of the movie, he becomes the pure example of a persona non grata. You start hating him. What kind of person he is still. He gets murdered in Jang-e Badr. Otherwise, you hate him. You know, such powerful. You would yourself say that this character has been very powerfully played by this actor. So if the casting is good, all credit goes to the director. And then obviously comes, credit must go to the actors as well. The way they use their facial expressions,
because
and
they
the nuances.
all seemed to be
real.
So, you know, acting with such passion.
And very natural.
Yeah, and
very natural.
That's something that comes throughout the film. There is not a single place where you think something may be as a misfit.
Exactly, and especially even when the Battle of Uhud was lost by the Muslims, and there is festivity going on in the other camp. You see, Hinda is, enjoying it and celebrating the triumph over the Muslims after the Uhud war. That we remember as Muslims, we remember that apparently Battle of Uhud was lost by the Muslims, and some companions of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not obey apparently, and we lost that. And obviously on the other camp, in the other camp, festivities were going on. there is the music of this celebration. That music is so powerful. Again, full marks to Maurice and Mustafa Akkad, who actually hired him, because you know, in those days, in 70s and 60s and 80s, people used to wait for this person, the composer, that if he's busy in some film, they used to wait for him to get free, and once he is free, he was actually taken aboard. You see,
Excellent.
so he's an excellent music composer.
And because of course he had to work with the instruments that would have been available at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So he would have had to be culturally appropriate as well within his music score.
Exactly, exactly. You know, he was an intelligent music composer. When he signed for this project, obviously he studied the culture and the lifestyle of the desert, the person who is living in a desert, what kind of poetry and what kind of, you know, voices he is
The
familiar
rhythm
with,
and the sound. And
exactly. So he was, and I was talking of the festivities and the celebrations going on in that camp. You know, the facial expressions of Hind and the slave who is you know, showing his skills and you know, it is so good. I think that it comes before, yes, it comes before the Battle of Uhud, just one night before the Battle of Uhud. And she appoints the slave that you are going to kill or martyr Hazrat Hamza, and after that, obviously after that, she will, you know, operate and everything. So that festivity, that celebration and the music and the way that was put on the screen and the way that involves the audience who is sitting in cinema hall, it is all phenomenal. I always take the message as a successful cinematic piece. I study it as a cinematic piece, and I appreciate as a cinematic piece. You see, as far as the history of Islam is concerned, that is very much available in books.
Exactly.
We can consult any good book if we want to study the message of Islam. As film lecturer, as film student, and as a cine goer, what actually appeals, what is appealing for me, cinematic treatment is appealing for me, and the way Mustafa Akkad treated every scene, every visual, and the way he incorporated music into that, that is phenomenal.
Because, of course, as you're explaining, it is an amalgamation of many things coming together that leave you with a masterpiece, that so many things are going on in sync. And if you've got something that, even just one slightly, less important thing that is a bit of a misfit, it all starts to fall apart.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because the viewer is so attuned to seeing something in a certain way, then that thing will, it'll be disturbing. It had Oscar nominations as well.
Yeah. The music score of Maurice went to it was nominated for the best original score. It was the original score, and but unfortunately it did not win. And Star Wars, the music of Star Wars, that was the triumphant eventually.
Right. So let's talk about when this film, when it was released. How was it received, and what was the reaction of people at that time?
Well, when it was under production, there were some controversies from the highest level. Those who were ready to fund, they stopped funding because people had not seen yet. They did not know what is how the personality of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is being presented in cinema. They did not have any idea of that.
As to how it would be done.
Yeah, exactly. So they were terrified of it. Maybe they were feeling insecure, maybe
anxious.
Anxious as well, yes. And primarily, religiously, they were feeling insecure because there is no tradition in Islam that you draw some, you cannot you cannot draw pictures and sketches. You cannot make. I have seen in the early pictorial representations of personalities is prohibited in Islam. This is why people throughout the ages, throughout the history, they had not been doing it. But this was for the first time that they were not going to make still pictures. A step further, they were going to make a film on it. So therefore, they faced some controversies during the production of the film. But your question is, what was the reaction of the people? There were two types of reactions. Number one, there was a reaction on the box office, and the other reaction was at the receiving end of the viewers. In the box office, before it was released in New York, there arose a controversy. There was a small group of Muslims, and that group was of Nation of Islam. That's a sect. They were actually agitating against the rumor. It was actually a rumor
that there was some sort of depiction.
And Anthony Quinn is going to impersonate Rasulullah instead of impersonating Hazrat Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So they were agitating against it. When they were told that it was not the case, they got satisfied and the controversy subsided. But by then, they say it had done a great damage to the revenue. $10 million was spent in those days, was spent on the production of this film, and only $15 million were,
generated.
It was, yes. $5 million was not, it is not appreciable revenue, it is not good amount, especially in this industry. So they say that this controversy actually damaged the revenue at the box office. But with the passage of time, people accepted it, and you see now we are discussing this film. This is the success of the film that we attribute it as the best film and the masterpiece and the something which must be analyzed over national channel as well. It has been every now and then it has been being aired by the private media, Pakistani media. So
it is aired on Pakistani channels as well, yes, in Ramzan.
In Ramzan, and it has been translated in various languages.
Yes.
It was produced in 2 languages, but it has been dubbed and translated.
It has been dubbed, yes.
In subtitles, there are subtitles available in Tamil.
Yes.
It has been dubbed.
Yes, whereas the director didn't want that, but in a way, it's good. Because then you're catering to all those audiences. Yeah.
There is an irony associated with the topic and with the director and with the director's death, and that is very interesting. What is that? He stood against the perception. He stood against the perception that terror, Islam originates terror. He stood against that perception, right? And he made a film, and he depicted that Islam was the religion of peace. But unfortunately, when he died in a bomb blast. You see irony of fate.
Yes, definitely, yes. Oh, right. Okay, so now we're talking about the director. So here he has his pre-production done. As you said, the casting's finished and he's going to shoot. What's on his mind right now? What strategy does he have? What was his strategy?
In terms of depiction,
yes,
of the personalities,
and the film in general. How did he? How was he sort of? How would he have got about it from a technical point of view?
It is really very difficult. It always becomes difficult to represent some word into a picture. And they say you combine 1,000 words and you make one picture.
Yes.
It was really difficult. How to represent on bigger screen? I mean, these events have happened in the past. For example, Hijrah has taken place, and the Battle of Uhud, the Battle of Badr, the conquest of Makkah, these all things are the part of the history. But now this is the question, the question of showing on the screen. It was actually, staring into the eyes of the director, and he faced the gaze of the history very brilliantly and very wisely and boldly. How he consulted various clerics and the scholars of Islam, and he got NOC from them that these, for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself and his relatives and the caliphs, those all personalities will not be shown physically on screen. And okay, this was the NOC, but without showing them on screen, how would they continue with the story pictorially? It was a huge challenge. And how did he deal with all? And your question, responding to your question, he dealt with it symbolically. For example, when he comes to Medina, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes to Medina, the camel, only the neck of the camel and the mouth of the camel is shown. And it is shown that somebody is riding and he is passing the commandments. Voice is not, again, voice is not impersonated.
It was more of a sort of what is being received by the other actor.
Exactly.
Or the other person who was responding to something that was telling us that what was being said.
Exactly. Only the, and if it was inevitable to show the face of some sacred personality, there was the light only. And light was actually depicting this sacredness, and the light was actually the alternative of the face of that personality, sacred personality. And similarly, as we were talking off air, that the sword of Mola Ali, it was shown.
Yes.
The double-edged
sword. Yes.
Zulfikar was shown, and it was to establish that Mola Ali is in the war, and he himself is there. And this is how he established everything, that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam by showing the camel, and Mola Ali by showing the sword. This is how he dealt.
In fact, that was very intelligently done, was it not?
Exactly.
It was in fact very intelligent, and I would say that it sort of increased the fascination of the viewer for the personality that was being depicted.
Exactly. Concealment is itself an art, and it actually fans the fire. And if you, and obviously very powerful, as a cinegoer, I can very easily feel that if you are watching this film in a cinema hall, you will get carried away with the emotions, and you will burst into tears, especially when the last scene comes. I mean, the way he has shot it, and the way he has edited it, and the way he has incorporated music into it, and the way he has put dissolves into it, those all are marvelous. And believe me, when I was watching on TV, and I was watching for the 4th or 5th time on TV, still my eyes get wet when the last scene came, that from here afterwards, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam won't be available among these people. This is the magic.
And this
of
is my
the
last
movie.
sermon to you, and that's true.
And the last call of Bilal, people say that the era of people say that it was as if the era of the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was yet again dawned on the people of Medina by listening to that call only. And it was excellently depicted on the screen as well. We have read in the books, and we have seen on the screen, and we find it more attractive sometimes.
Of course, because you can relate to that so much more. When you when you read something, as you said, you can read history books, and there are many things that where you can get your information from. But when facts go together with the visuals that are especially created to support those incidents, those personalities, those moments in time, it makes all the more difference. It actually does impact you in such a different way. Yeah,
I always refer Lenin, the great leader of Russia, when I talk of the effect of cinema on semi-literate people. He says that newspaper is something which is to be read by the literate people only. You cannot bring any social change through newspaper only. You see, you have to be literate in order to read a newspaper. He says that it is only cinema which can bring some change into a society. He actually regards cinema as the purest and the effective most social change agent. Right? in a semi-literate society. Pakistanis and overall Muslim society is a semi-literate society. You go to Bangladesh, you go to India, you look at the Pakistani Muslims. They're not highly most of them are not highly qualified. I think that it was a joint leap. It was a bold step by Mustafa
Very
Akkad.
bold.
And remake is also in process. And now people, some clerics are quite convinced that yes, we are going to support you. Even now, they are now convinced that yes, they are convinced of the power of visuals.
That was going to be my next question, to ask you this, that we have so much of a power of the media, and especially the electronic, the visual medium. Cinema, of course, the big screen has its own impact. It stays with you for the rest of your life.
Impact.
Yes. So if we're talking about today's current scenario, Islam comes again. It's, we're usually on the defensive. We're trying to tell people that this is being hijacked by people who want ulterior motives. Our religion promotes peace. Islamophobia.
Yeah.
So exactly as, we're talking about this film that came out at that time, 1976, I think.
Yeah.
So now, in today's current scenario, how important is it to make a film like this? And if you had the chance to do that, what would you do? How would you go about it?
Two questions there are. One is relatively easy, but one is very difficult for me to respond. If I were the director, well, I will respond to the first part of the question. I think that after 9/11, which happened in 2001, it became the dire need of the time to represent Islam as a religion of peace. I think before that, the world had not undergone the boom of media. Now we do have the revolution of media. Even the person who belongs to low socio-economic stratum does consume media. And television is everywhere. It has its own impact, you see, on society, in lower middle class, upper middle class, everywhere. It does cause some effects. I think that after 9/11, there has been propaganda about Islamophobia. And people in France, in Germany, and in England, and in America, they were terrified of the beard and of hijab and overall of Muslims. It was the high time to, whatever medium you can use, it was high time to convey the essence of the message of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But unfortunately, we obviously, again, we relied upon written word, which is obviously the basic. Actually, it is the long thing. I always say, I also write, and I always say that print medium is the launching pad for all the media.
Exactly.
It is the backbone of all the media.
Exactly.
Having said that, look at the semi-literate population of other countries. If you want to convey your message to the people who are living abroad and who are not literate enough to understand your written word, obviously you will have to take help of the images.
Exactly.
Why don't you switch over to this medium now? After 9/11, it was I think that it was the need of the day that a film should have been made on the message of Islam and on justice and equality. I'm a great advocate of it. You must, a very interesting some interesting lines of Karen Armstrong actually are circulating in my mind. She writes that even Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was so moderate and enlightened that he used to take his wives to the fronts where wars and battles were being fought. And not only he used to take his wives to the fronts, but also he used to consult them in order to devise some strategy of war or battle, how to fight. You see, and this much enlightened he was. This has been written by Karen. And why she wrote that? She wanted to tell the West that it is a wrong perception that Muslims suppress women. It is not the teaching of Islam.
That's not a religious aspect. What people are getting is a cultural thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You see that it's very hard for people to differentiate between the cultural and the religious impact of something.
Exactly.
And that's the problem that I think we face the most.
Exactly. And you know, when Western people, whenever they come forward with the very neutral mind, it is my claim, and I proclaim always, whenever you study Islam with the neutral mind, you get greatly inspired by the personality of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Absolutely.
He was so powerful, and he was the icon of justice and icon of enlightenment and icon of humanity and women rights as well.
Yes.
And you know, even his companions used to show resentment upon this much advocacy of women's
fairness.
Rights.
True. Especially in a culture that was so used to,
in a Bedouin culture,
abusing women in so many ways. They had no, their daughters had no rights. The concept of burying them alive at that time.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly.
And I remember in the film there was a scene where it was being narrated that somebody said that he had a daughter, and he was talking about burying his daughter alive. I mean, something that is you cannot identify with, that this was so ingrained in that culture at that time. The message is actually many, many layers of a message. There's so much depth. When we talk about the depiction of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, the most, you know, one of the things that I really thought was to be completely enduring is that in the beginning, when the Prophet comes back after the first revelation, and he tells his wife and he tells his companions, because he had earned the personality, he had earned the credibility that he has never told a lie in his life. He's the ultimate embodiment of truthfulness. That is why nobody doubted him.
Exactly.
So isn't that an amazing message right at the beginning of the film?
Exactly, exactly. From the scene the film opens up, that is so mysterious and engaging. Three unidentifiable horse riders appear on the screen. They come closer and then they go away. And
in opposite directions, and they'll all like fork out.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there are three horses, two of one color and one is of different color. So these all have meanings, you see. And they go to Persia, and some of them go to Rome, and they convey the message of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is how the film opens up. But as far as the message of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the dawat, the invitation to embrace Islam, that is concerned, that starts from, yes, you are right, that starts from the personal truthfulness, personal transparency of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He stood and inquired about his personality, and he wanted some, you know, he wanted some advocacy maybe from the people who were standing in front of him. And everybody said, yes, we believe, and we are the witnesses that you never told a lie in the entire life. See, for 40 years, a person lives in them, you know, and earns credibility. And it was only due to credibility that people said, you
so
might be right, you
yes.
might be right, but we are not going to accept your message at this particular point of time, because it might damage the belief of our forefathers. It was the hurdle only.
Yes.
They did not say that you are lying.
No.
They did not belie Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but instead they said, you might be right, you never told a lie, but it is our compulsion that we cannot say yes to your message, because we do have our own beliefs and the beliefs of forefather, and we cannot say goodbye to that right at this point of time.
Absolutely true. We've just got a little time left before the end of the program. Tell us about your favorite scenes in the film, and also tell us about the overall message that the film is giving itself.
Well, before that, I remember that you asked if I were the director, if I am supposed to remake it, how would I remake it? I think that the conventions of Mustafa Akkad will be followed by me as well. I won't show any face, obviously. I'll use light. And I wish I could hire again Mr. Morris for music score. He's so powerful. I mean, he's my favorite. You know, his father was a composer for radio, and he was trained at home for music. He was trained at home, but he excelled then. And in those days, there were no electronic apparatus. And he used to play with the simple, you know, instruments. If I become the director, I'll cast you as Hind.
Oh. I wasn't expecting that one.
Just at the lighter side, you see. Please don't take it seriously.
No, you just caught me by complete surprise there. That's okay.
You gave me freedom to cast someone, you know.
Right.
And obviously, I think that I might not be, it is my tribute to the great filmmaker that I might not be, at this age, I am not able to reproduce it, frankly. Maybe after 20 years, when I have gone through so many films and I have read so many books and I have taught so much, maybe at the age of 60, I will be quite able to remake it. But I will have to follow the footprints of Mustafa Akkad.
Right. Ahmad, thank you so much for being with us here today and for, you know, a wonderfully engaging episode concerning such an important film, an important message.
It was a pleasure and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so here we are at the end of today's program. It was really a really enriching discussion, talking about this month as well, you know, reaping all the blessings that you can, because you find that Ramzan starts and then you're into the middle of Ramzan, then you're approaching the end, and everyone is going crazy with their shopping activities. So that all happens throughout the year, but take that time to reach that fulfillment, to, you know, reap all those blessings that you can in this holy month. And do watch the film. If you haven't watched it already, we guarantee that you'll be able to take away something from it. So until next week, stay happy, stay blessed.